channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. In today's video, I'm going to be reading to you guys Reddit short scary stories. I am doing it a little bit different this time. I am a little bit more up close to the mic. I would love for you guys to let me know if you guys prefer this sort of style, or if you want me to be a little bit more away from the camera like I usually do. So definitely let me know. I really hope you guys enjoy. If you do, please don't forget to show your support by giving it a thumbs up. Comment down below how your day is going. I would love to know. I hope it's going good. And please don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well, so you can join the BMR'S ASMR family. I would love for you to be a part of it. As always, all of the stories will be linked in the description, just in case you guys want to check them out. Okay, so the first story is called "My Neighbor is Really Starting to Creep Me Out." I just moved into a new neighborhood and I'm starting to get really worried. My neighbor, who I don't know at all, comes outside every night when it gets dark and stares at my house with a creepy look. He doesn't move during this staring session, and it typically lasts about 20 minutes to an hour. I have called the police about the situation, but they are not much help, and I don't know how to handle this on my own. One time, I tried staring back at him, and he just wouldn't budge. I went and knocked on his door one time, and the house was eerie silent, and there was no answer. When I returned to my porch, I turned around and he was just standing there in the window looking at me with that creepy stare. I turned around and he was just standing there in the window looking at me with that creepy stare. I have been here a few months and he doesn't miss a single night of doing this. And one night I was taking out the trash and he was just standing at the edge of my driveway staring at me. And I said, "Hello, what are you doing?" And he just stood there and wouldn't budge. Didn't say a word. I walked away because I felt like something was about to happen. Literally, as I'm writing this post, he is staring at my house. I live alone and I'm 45 years old. What do I do? Okay, so that is the end of that story. That one really creeps me out because, I feel like you're supposed to feel safe, obviously, in your home, and you want to have that peace. But imagine just your neighbor randomly staring at your house, and when you try to go confront him, he doesn't answer. You can't communicate with him. See, like, if there's anything that you're doing wrong, or I don't know, I guess the reason why he's staring at your house maybe it was like a guardian angel that was just watching over their house. But also, I am shocked that this person did not wake up their parents and tell them that there's someone in the house. Because imagine if it was like, I don't know, a real person that had broken into their house just trying to act like crazy, so they wouldn't suspect anything, especially that them being so young. So that story really creeped me out. The next story is called Sophie. Like most kids, I had an imaginary friend growing up. In fact, I had several, but the first one I can kind of remember was a little girl called Sophie. She was a normal girl, roughly my age, between 4 and 6. And she wore a dress and socks. However, Sophie had a very strange feature, an odd crank in her neck. My first house where I lived was an old one. I'd say roughly 80 years old, and I've grown up calling my next door neighbor Grandma, who had been in her place for the past 60 years. This is important later. Sophie was my best friend when I was little, which isn't out of the ordinary for kids. I'd talk to her a lot and we would play in the room, but she would never go downstairs. She told me she was scared of them. It became routine for me to walk down the stairs, turn around and call up, "Hey, see, it's okay, you can come down." She wouldn't, and I could never understand why. The older I got, the less I saw Sophie, and eventually I did forget about her. That was until Mom and I visited Grandma after moving houses, and we were reminiscing about my childhood there. That's when Mom brought up what had happened. That's when Mom brought up what had become my staircase routine when I was little, which led Grandma to question, "Who are you talking to?" I replied, "Oh, Sophie," and proceeded to describe her. Grandma went quiet. "You know, when I first moved into this house, my neighbors were in the process of moving out. They had a daughter who had tripped and fallen down the stairs around a month prior, and sadly, she did not survive the fall. She broke her neck." Okay, guys, that is the end to that story. Now you cannot tell me that story is not scary, but it's sad that the spirit is there, and hopefully it was able to rest in peace after that, after having her as a friend. But that story is really creepy, and I guess also for the kid, knowing after so many years that it was actually a spirit and not something they were imagining, because more than likely that's what they thought, that it was just someone that they were making up in their head. But come to find out, it was a poor little girl spirit. This next one is called "Got Lost in the Woods for 8+ hours as a little girl and saw something unexplainable." I grew up in a densely forested rural area in central Virginia, and like most kids my age, 10 at the time of this story, I spent a lot of time playing in and around the woods. My best friend and I had found a creek one day while exploring different deer trails through the woods. This creek we happened on was a very rare find and the perfect spot for us to play. It was wide and deep enough to swim around in and had nice, soft, mossy banks on either side to rest on after we had tired ourselves out. The water was cool and clear, no copperheads and no mosquitoes, because the water was consistently running. We were psyched. After a few hours of swimming, we had to walk back home for lunch, but made plans to pack lunch the next day so we can have a picnic on the creek banks and spend the whole day there. she should just go her own way and we would see who got out first. So, we split up. Now, as an adult, I fully acknowledged I was being a stubborn brat and also an idiot. Worst possible thing we could have done. Not 10 minutes after splitting up, I began to hear someone walking maybe 100 feet behind me. Thinking it was my friend deciding to go my way after all, I slowed down so she can catch up to me. Instead, whatever it was matched my pace. I slow down, it slows down. I stop, it stops. This went on for hours, the whole time I was going back and forth whether or not it was just in my head or if there was really something following me. I picked up a big stick, swung it a few times to make sure it was sturdy if I had to hit someone, and trucked on. As it began to get darker, I came up on something that made my heart sink into my stomach. It was Bigfoot's bathroom. I had just walked in a huge circle for hours, despite being 100% sure I was following the setting sun west the entire time. Confused and frustrated, I sat down on a log and just screamed a little heart out while smacking my whoop-ass stick repeatedly onto the ground. As I tried to collect myself, I heard the footsteps again, walking up from behind shift at the gas station. There he sits in his chair like always ignoring me. He stares blankly at the TV. He doesn't even look at me or acknowledge me. Nice to see you too, I say. He ignores me. I walk into the kitchen. The cat's bowl is empty. You can't even feed the cat, I mutter as I do the chores he refuses to do. An unpleasant odor makes its way in my nose. He never freaking cleans. If he doesn't want to work, he can be a homemaker, but he's lazy. He just sits in that chair. I walk over to the chair and see the cat nibbling away at his arm again. He still stares blankly at the TV, or at least he would be if the cat hadn't eaten his eyes. He hasn't moved since the last day I hit him. Though it may be my own fault, I should have taken out the hammer out of my hand before I swung. Okay, that is the end to that scary story. That story really freaked me out, and I was definitely not expecting that twist ending, and it really got me and freaked me out. This next story is called I Decided to Keep My Hair Rather Than Finding Out Where My Son Is Being Kept After He Was Abducted. Okay. I missed having hair on my head, and I had turned fully bald. I have tried every sort of treatment that supposedly claimed that could bring back my hair, but all have disappointingly failed. Then I heard a man who could bring hair back through any one of his secrets answers, and I grew curious. I went to this man and paid him his charge, and he didn't use any fancy chemical or any kind of science. He simply got out a pen and wrote some what you guys think.